Hi, I'm Larry from Literary Gladiators, and I'm going to be talking today about Josh's foodie book tag, the latest one, the sausage book tag. I thought that this might be a great opportunity for me to talk about some of my favorite works. I love this tag. So I just want to go ahead and get started with that. Question 1. Bratwurst, a powerful first line. Okay, for this one, I chose a book by John Irving called A Prayer for Owen Meany. It's a really good book. Let me go ahead and read the line for you. I am doomed to remember a boy with a wrecked voice, not because of his voice, or because he was the smallest person I ever knew, or even because he was the instrument of my mother's death, but because he is the reason I believe in God. Now, as far as opening lines go, I think that this is one of the best that I've ever read. And the reason I feel that way is because of how gripping it is. I mean, it automatically makes you want to know what is going on. The story's about Owen Meany and his relationship with the narrator. And it's basically a book, at its fundamental level, I guess it's a book about destiny. And that opening line, though, it really kind of makes you want to know more about what he's talking about, right? Like this boy who is the smallest person he ever knew, and he's talking physical size, is somehow responsible for the death of the mother's narrator and is also the reason that the narrator believes in God. Those two things seem extremely contrary when at first glance, so it's very intriguing. Like, you want to know how both of those things can be true at the same time. I definitely recommend this book. If that doesn't grab you right off the bat, by the time you get past the first couple of pages, I guarantee you'll be hooked because of the descriptions of what it was like growing up with Owen Meany. And he was so small that he describes very early on how in school, when the teacher wasn't looking, the kids in his class would pick Owen Meany up and pass him around because they couldn't believe how light he was, and just because they could do that, which is obviously a terrible and cruel thing to do to somebody. So it kind of has that rubbernecky, like, you just want to know more about Owen Meany and what he's all about, and how he deals with his handicap. So it's a great book. I would recommend it. It takes place in New England during the Vietnam War, or up to the beginning of the Vietnam War and then into it. In fact, the narrator, as he writes the book, has moved to Canada to avoid being drafted into the Vietnam War. Question number 2, Braunschweiger, a work you enjoy that people often have complaints about. For that one, I'm going to go with Catcher in the Rye by J.D. Salinger. It's a book that I really love, and a lot of people nowadays seem to have a lot of problems with. And especially the Holden character, they think that he is really annoying and just full of angst and a pain in the neck. But I really like this book. I think it's about a lot more than just some pain in the neck, some spoiled kid out on a vacation, and we're doing an episode on it next season on Literary Gladiators, so you could hear a lot more of my thoughts on it then. Question 3, Frankfurter, a work from a familiar writer you feel more people need to read. And for that one, I'm choosing The Plague by Albert Camus. A lot of people talk about The Stranger, and I haven't actually read The Stranger, so I'm not going to really comment on that one. I have read The Plague, though, and I love it. It's a great story. And to me, there's a lot going on in that book. Question 4, Knackwurst, a short but meaningful work. For that one, I choose Cannery Row. Not a long book at all, but it's very good. It's by John Steinbeck, and basically it is a story about living near the canneries in Monterey, California. And it deals with people there who are for whatever reason, kind of not socially, uh, I guess, adjusted. They are bums, for lack of a better word. Or and I love the way that Steinbeck kind of romanticizes bumdom. It's a very rare take on it, and I think that you should check it out. It's kind of fun. It's a fun read.
Question 5. Salami, an old work that remains relevant today.
Well, I'm going to stick with Steinbeck, and I'm going to say The Grapes of Wrath. I think that the book is very important, especially today, because it really takes a look at the line between extreme poverty and wealth, or at least people with sufficient means to take care of themselves, versus people that are not. And
Question 6. Chorizo, your favorite work from or about a Spanish-speaking country.
for this one, I chose The Sun Also Rises by Ernest Hemingway. A lot of it takes place in Pamplona, Spain, around the time of the bullfight there that they have every year. And I like the book a lot. And it does delve into quite a bit of Spanish culture, especially surrounding the bullfight and what it is. Ernest Hemingway himself was an aficionado of bullfighting, so he understood the sport very well and was able to write about it with a large amount of passion that made me, really kind of appreciate maybe what some of the appeal is, right? Because thinking about it, bullfighting in general, it's the way that we look at it tends to be it's barbaric, it's horrible, and all of that. And it's not to say that those feelings aren't legitimate, but at the same time, there is a need to understand the appeal too, right? Like, why do people enjoy it so much? Why is it a tradition that goes back as far as it does?
Question 7. Andouille, your favorite work from or about the American South.
For this one, I choose The Sound and the Fury by William Faulkner. This is a really interesting book, and I'm kind of torn between that one and Confederacy of Dunces, which actually takes place in New Orleans, tying it to the Andouille a little bit stronger. They take place in completely different time periods and are about completely different things. That's by John Kennedy O'Toole, by the way, The Confederacy of Dunces. It's a good book. It's funny. But the Sound and the Fury, I think, is probably a better choice because, it deals with kind of things that have come to be Southern stereotypes or redneck or hillbilly kind of stereotypes. And it's written in like a stream of consciousness way by several different characters in the story, kind of around the same events. The first part of the book is not easy. It's extremely challenging because it is from the perspective of a mentally disabled person. So the stream of consciousness in that is kind of, it's not very grammatical or good at describing what's going on, but it's if you get past that first part, then the next couple of parts, I think there's 3 parts in total. It's been a while since I read it, so the next 2 parts are kind of really like let you know what happened in the situation that's described in the first part, or at least give you a better idea. And the last part is more about the aftermath of it. And the second part, well, actually, both of the parts are more about the aftermath than the actual events. But it's an interesting story.
Question 8. Kielbasa, your favorite work from or about Poland.
For this, I chose The Painted Bird by Josie Kosinski. I have to confess, I have not read the book or any book that are set in Poland or by Polish authors, so this is kind of the hard one for me, but I had to cheat and look up a book. And so I looked at a few, and this one seemed like the most interesting. It's an extremely controversial book. It was written in 1965. It's about a boy who was removed from his family in a way, not directly, but his family was exported from Poland during World War II, and it's about his search to try to find the boy and what he sees along the way, as far as, you know, the atrocities of the Nazis and stuff like that. And the reason it's controversial is because at the time it was written, it was being marketed as an autobiographical work, and since then it's been determined that it's not. It's complete fiction. So that's the reason for the controversy. Critics loved it when it came out, when they were under the impression that it was autobiographical. But since then, I guess the tides have turned on it. I haven't read it, like I said, but I am intrigued by it, just because even though it might not be a first-hand account, I want to see, you know, why the critics loved it so much in the first place. I'm sure that it's got some really good descriptions of what it was like, and I you know, having no experience with that kind of history, I would enjoy reading it. The stories within were collected by the author through books written in Polish that were unknown to Western audiences. So that's how he was able to get away with it for a little while. And I just, you know, taking it for what it is, I think it might still be worth the read. So that's what I would like to read.
Question 9. Blood Sausage. A work you are surprised you enjoyed.
A heartbreaking work of staggering genius by David Eggert. Because what a title, right? I mean, it's, you know, arrogant. It's, you know, self-aggrandizing. It's like, how could you name your book Genius? You'd say that, not only genius, but staggering genius. So I didn't think that I would like the book because it sounds so pompous, but when I read it, I liked it. What I liked about it was that it's the first time that I ever read an account of a childhood that took place at the same time that I was growing up. So that was kind of interesting. You know, he talks a lot about the real world in there, and I used to watch that when I was a kid. He talks about the furniture stylings of the time, kind of early 80s, like left over from the 70s, where you had all these kind of grotesque orange and green, like lime green, you know, and stuff like that. Like, so it was like, wow, you know, this is kind of like what I experienced. Of course, the other elements of the book, luckily, I, you know, have no relation to directly, but at least not, well, no, I don't. I don't know what it's like for my parents to die when I'm a kid, so I don't have that experience. But just saying, wow, you know, this kind of brings me back. It kind of makes me feel a kinship, I guess, with the author, that we're from the same, you know, time and place, and, you know, same origin in that respect. So that's not the only reason I like the book. It's pretty good. I gotta admit, I didn't read it backwards. The way that it's written is that you can read the story, right, which is a front and ways telling of it, and then you turn the book over and upside down and read it back. And then so I don't know what's in that second half, I guess, but the first half was interesting. It's basically about dealing with grief and kind of assuming the role of adulthood, you know, at an age that is premature relative to the social norms, I guess. It's good.
Question 10. Pepperoni. A favorite writer of yours that leaves an aftertaste.
Well, this one for me is kind of a no-brainer, right? Because it's George Orwell, 1984, Animal Farm. These are the two books by him that I have read, and both of them are extremely riveting. They leave you feeling kind of empty afterwards. If you haven't read these books, go ahead, but be warned that when it's over, you're not going to have a lot of faith left in humanity or the future. So, there's your grain of salt. But I mean, for days after reading each of these, and I read them years apart too, but days after reading each of these, I was consumed by thoughts of hopelessness, I guess. So it's, if you want to feel hopeless, I recommend these books. But they do get at some really interesting ideas and questions about power and humanity. So check it out.
Question 11. Bologna. A mass market work you enjoyed.
For this one, I'm going to choose The Firm by John Grisham. It's a good book. Not a whole lot of thematical interest, or interesting thematical stuff in there but it's definitely just, one of those books that's written to be consumed, and I like it. It was a good story. I read it years ago, around the time that the movie came out. I read it before I saw the movie because I wanted to do that, and it had me definitely interested in the story.
Question 12. Hot sausage. What is your favorite sausage?
This is a tough one, but I'm going to say andouille because I love it. I like Italian sausages too, but I really like andouille. It's so spicy. It's unapologetic in its spiciness, and its texture is kind of good. I like it. It's got a good chew to it, and it's a good sausage. So that's what I'm going to say. I like andouille sausage the best. And then the last part of this is just to tag people. I'm going to refrain from doing that. I'm going to leave it open to everybody. I hope that some more people can do this. Some of these questions are a little challenging, especially the Poland one it's a tough one because I haven't read anything from Poland. I don't expect that a lot of people have. So what you should do, what I suggest, is do what I did. If you haven't read something from Poland, just look something up, and talk about it. I think it's a fine caveat, and I hope to see a lot of people do this tag. It's a good tag, and thanks to Josh for coming up with it. And that's it for now. I'll be seeing you sometime on the interwebs.